All right. I think we are live. Give me a second here. Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm going live in the Facebook group today to talk about tone for clarinet and saxophone. And I'm going to be watching the comments. So if you have any questions that you want answered, feel free to chime in. So the questions that I have for today are about consistency in practice and in sound, and the embouchure getting tired. And also the second question is finding the right mouthpiece on saxophone and clarinet. And then also just getting a good sound in general. So some people commented about not liking their sound or getting a breathy or edgy sound. So I'm going to address all of that, and I'm kind of just going to cover both instruments in each question. So first off, let's talk about getting a good sound in general on clarinet and sax. So there's some basic steps that we want to go through first, just to make sure that we have all the basics and fundamentals in place. And then I'll also show some exercises for that as well. Okay. So for clarinet, and again, clarinet and saxophone have a lot of similarities, so this will probably apply to both, though I am going to talk about both specifically. So for clarinet, in terms of making the embouchure, I'm just going to go over the basic steps. And if you're watching this video, you can kind of do this along with me to check yourself. So first off, we want to make sure that our chin is nice and flat. If our chin's too far up, it's going to just create not being able to get that full sound. So I make sure that my chin is nice and flat. Then I'm going to put the bottom lips over my teeth. Okay. And then I'm going to put the teeth on top of the mouthpiece, the upper teeth. And then I kind of just draw my lips in like a drawstring purse. You can try this with a finger. So bottom lip over teeth, then top teeth on top. So in terms of how our lips are, we don't want to be too smiley, right? I'm just thinking of them nice and connected, and just pulling into the mouthpiece and just making sure we're sealing around that mouthpiece. So this is called a single lip embouchure. I do know that some people play with a double lip embouchure, and when you play with a double lip embouchure, that means that your upper lip is going over your top teeth. The standard is to play with a single lip embouchure, and if you're experiencing embouchure fatigue or pain in general, you might consider switching to a single lip embouchure. That was some of the questions I had gotten about that specific embouchure. So I play with a single lip embouchure for both saxophone and clarinet. So after I just practice that position, so some people told me if you're experiencing a breathy sound or air leaks, so that just might mean that you need to train this lip muscle a little bit by practicing long tones. So that's just basically just playing long notes on your instrument. I usually do them chromatically, so I start on my lowest note and work up to the highest note. So I start on my low E. And then I just go up to like my high C or my G. There's a great Bob spring exercise I have posted in the group that's just chromatic, whole note, long tones. So let me know if you have a question about that. And sometimes you can do this, while you're watching Netflix or something, if this is kind of tedious for you to do. But I usually just do this and really focus on my sound. Sometimes I'll do this with a metronome on quarter note equals 60 or a tuner. And then the second exercise I do that's really great for long tones is a slur exercise, which I demonstrated a little bit in the last video. So I'm going to start on, I'm just going to pick a note here to start on. I'm going to start on a C, and then I'm going to press the register key to get a G. Okay, and then then I'm going to keep going up chromatically, so C sharp. And I'll keep going all the way up to a high C. So basically, you want the high note to come out and be really even and clear if you're getting that kind of sound. So I'm thinking with my tongue, my throat's really relaxed. If your throat is really tight or your tongue position is too low, you're gonna get the you'll get that undertone that I just got. So let me know if you have any more questions about that. So those are the two that I do on clarinet: long tones and that chromatic slur exercise, which I posted in the group. Okay, so the second thing, and this will help for both clarinet and sax before I transition to saxophone tone for a second, is you can train your embouchure outside of playing your instrument with a pencil. So you'll want an unsharpened pencil, and you can put it in your mouth like this. So you'll hold it like a double lip embouchure, so you'll just hold it with both your lips. And you can see how long you can do that for like a minute or longer, just keeping that pencil straight, and that helps train the lip muscles as well. So really the big thing is consistency. So just trying to do a little bit of practice every day to address the consistency question. I notice fatigue if I haven't practiced for a few days and I try to do a really long session, like a couple hours. That's sometimes when I'm experiencing some tiredness and embouchure fatigue. So it's better to do short practice sessions than like a cram marathon. You can think about it as studying for a test. So if you are experiencing some embouchure fatigue, I would try practicing in like short 30-minute sections and taking a break rather than like a marathon 2 or 3 hour session, especially if you're a doubler and you're playing both instruments. Okay, so next I'm going to talk a little bit about saxophone. So again, long tones are really awesome. So you can do chromatic long tones on saxophone, starting from your lowest note to your highest note. So for me, that's my low B flat on saxophone. And I'll do that all the way up to my highest note. Maybe I'll go to like my high G. The other thing that's really, really great for saxophone specifically is overtone exercises. This will really help with your throat. So I think we were talking about how when we're playing saxophone, we want to think in ah, and clarinet's more in So the overtone exercise, so on alto, you can do this on alto or tenor, whatever saxophone you play. I just had my alto today. You're going to start on a low B flat, so that's the lowest note on your saxophone. And you're going to see if you can get the higher overtones on saxophone. So there's a really great book for this called the Top Tones for Saxophone. So here's the low B flat. And now, keeping the same fingering, I'm going to get the B flat an octave above just by changing my like embouchure and tone production here. So here's the low B flat. Okay, so I'm just holding down the low B flat and getting that series of overtones. So most people find it really hard just to get that first B flat out. So what you can do is you can finger the B flat an octave above, so 1, 2, and then side key, and then go back and forth between that regular B flat fingering and the low B flat overtone. So that just helps open up your throat a little bit and make sure you're not biting. I might have to do a tone video part 2. There's so many specifics. There's also just an exercise you can try on the mouthpiece. I'll demonstrate that really quickly. So you can take a mouthpiece. This is alto sax mouthpiece, and you can just blow a pitch. Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah, so on saxophone, on alto, you should be getting between a G and an A pitch. Okay, if you're getting like really high, like I have some students that get a B flat or C, that means that you're biting and just really pinched here. So that's a really great exercise to do. You can do it with a tuner, so just make sure you're somewhere between a G and an A for that. Okay, I'm watching the comments to see if anyone has comments about that. Okay, so let's move on to, we had some questions about finding the right mouthpiece. Okay, so mouthpieces are really personal for each person. So I'm just going to tell you what I use. So on saxophone, I'm primarily playing jazz alto. I'm using a Van Doren A6 medium chamber. And Van Doren Masters Optimum ligature. I also have a Meyer 8 mouthpiece that I like. And yeah, so that's what I'm using on alto. On clarinet, I am using a, right now I'm using a B40 lyre, a Van Doren B40, and I also have a Hawkins Model G that I like too. Okay, so like I said, finding the right mouthpiece is really specific to each person. So what works for me might not necessarily work for you, and that's why it's really important when you're picking a mouthpiece to see if you can try some out. So like when you're ordering online, see if you can get 3 or 4 different ones, because even there's variations between each individual mouthpiece. When I tried my Van Doren B40, I actually ordered 3 of them, and this was the one that I really liked. So what is generally not good is I see a lot of students playing on the stock mouthpiece that comes with the horn, so those generally aren't the best mouthpiece. So you do want to you know, try to upgrade your mouthpiece. And even if you're playing on like a student model or intermediate horn, upgrading the mouthpiece can be like a cheaper way rather than just getting like a professional model instrument to start sounding better kind of right away. Okay, so that is what I have for mouthpieces. Again, like finding and selecting a mouthpiece could really be an entire video. So if you want to know more about that, just let me know. You know, there's different like facings and tip openings and all that stuff that could really be an entire like discussion here. So in terms of the mouthpiece, because there was a question about the consistency, you want to make sure that you're really comfortable with your mouthpiece, because if you feel like you're biting or really putting forth a lot of pressure, that could be affecting your tone and also causing the fatigue. So for example, possibly if you have, there's difference between the hard rubber and metal mouthpieces, right? And each person's different. So on tenor, I play both the hard rubber and metal mouthpiece. And I find sometimes when I play my metal mouthpiece, I'm having to exert some more pressure. So that's why it's just really important to try a whole variety of mouthpieces and just see what really works for you. You know, you can look up what your favorite players are using. Okay, does anyone have any more questions about mouthpieces, sound? Oh, I do want to say, in terms of getting a good sound, after you know, you go through those embouchure and tone tips, what's also important is maintenance of your instrument. So again, some common problems I have with my students are like for saxophone, like the lower notes not coming out, or on clarinet, just like certain notes sounding fuzzy. So if you're having problems with specific notes, it could be that your instrument needs to get serviced, or if you haven't got maintenance in a while. I try to get my instruments in at least a year. I should probably do more often, like at least 6 months, just for like kind of a checkup to avoid problems. Sometimes the pads need replacing. So if you're having problems with a specific note, you might look into getting your instrument serviced. Okay, does anyone have questions before I go? Okay, so just kind of to recap what we talked about. So the first part of this video was getting a good sound in general on your clarinet and sax, and then going over some basic embouchure tips I use and exercises. Then we kind of talked about finding the right mouthpiece, and also consistency in your practice. And during our summer virtual Woodwind Academy, we're going to have a whole month on effective practice strategies. So we're going to be going over some specific practice exercises, maximizing your practice schedule, and just solidifying some habits that'll help you more effectively practice, set up a routine, and learn your music. Okay, great. Let me know. Please let me know if you have any questions about this video or if you'd like me to expand on any topics. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon or evening, depending on what time zone you're in, and we'll see you next week for another video. Bye.